Honorable, the Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen, amen, namaste.
Oath or affirmation. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, Mr. Esmond Ford, MP, member for Tunapuna, Mrs. Glenda Jennings-Smith, MP, member for Toko Sandy Grande, Mr. Adrian Leons, MP, member for Laventille East Mover, Mrs. Vidya Gayadeen Gopi Singh, MP, member for Oropouche West, and Mrs. Christy Nualo Hussain, MP, member for Kamuta Manzanilla, have asked to be excused from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the members seek is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate and the supplemental order paper, the miscellaneous provisions trial by Judge Alone Bill 2017, presented by the Attorney General.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the next stage of this bill be taken on Wednesday, the 28th day of June 2017.
Honorable members, the question is that debate on the second reading of the miscellaneous provisions trial by Judge Alone Bill 2017 be taken on Wednesday, June 20, 2017. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it.
Petitions, papers.
Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. The audited financial statements of the Point Lisas Industrial Port Development Corporation Limited for the financial year ended December 31st, 2016. The audited financial statements of Exim Bank for the financial year ended December 31st, 2016. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that these papers be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that papers 1 and 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Reports from committees.
Member for Diego Martin Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the following report. The second report of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure for the second session 2016-2017 for the 11th Parliament on the inquiry into the allocation and utilization of state lands for food production.
Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions.
The member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Social Development and Family Services, could the Minister state whether there is going to be a fast-tracking process for the issuing of grants for those families affected by Tropical Storm Bret?
Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is going to be a process for fast-tracking these applications. On June 20, 2017, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services established a Disaster Relief Operations Center. The prime purpose of this center is to ensure that all requests received in respect of grants are dealt with in a speedy and timely manner. In order to ensure that this whole process is well coordinated, it was agreed that first-level responders from the regional corporations would receive all requests. These requests would then be sent to the Disaster Relief Operations Center. At this point in time, we have officers in the field in all 14 regions, and as soon as that information reaches the center, it is disseminated to these officers who immediately go to these areas to conduct assessments. It must be noted, however, there are some areas that are still under floodwaters, and so the ministry has not been able to conduct assessments in those areas. Madam Speaker, I wish to inform the House that the corporations have already provided clearance for the ministry's intervention in 12 regional corporations, and as such, we have commenced assessments in Diego Martin, Princestown, Chaguanas, Point Fortin, Pinal de Bay, Tunapuna Piaco, San Juan Laventil, San Fernando, Rio Claro, and Sandy Grande. We received information in respect of Arima and Siparia yesterday afternoon, so officers are in the field there today, and we are currently working with the Couva Tabaki Disaster Management Unit with an aim to getting the relevant information from them. I also want to indicate, Madam Speaker, that whereas this process normally takes about 2 months, we have put a system in place to ensure that we can fast-track it and complete it in 3 weeks. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Couva North. Supplemental Couva North.
She answered it.
Member for Oropouche.
Thank you very much. Could the minister indicate as of this day how many households have so far accessed a grant from the ministry?
Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Madam Speaker, as I indicated, the process is going to take us 2 to 3 weeks. We have received requests from, thus far we have received requests from 1,074 households, and we are working to process those applications.
South Supplemental.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister, in cases of grants related to household appliances and so on, will ministry officials, because if people would have purchased appliances years and so on, will they be insisting on what we call the payments and so on from the householders, receipts and bills?
Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Madam Speaker, we recognize that this is an unusual circumstance. In some instances, persons may have lost everything and would not have those documents. So the ministry is going to try its best where it is necessary to waive that requirement. Because at the end of the day, intention is to ensure that these persons who were affected can return to normalcy as soon as possible.
For Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport, could the Minister state when will the natural water courses and major rivers be dredged and cleaned across Trinidad and Tobago in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Bret?
Of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Works and Transport, through its Drainage Division, has an ongoing program of cleaning and desilting watercourses throughout Trinidad. Measures undertaken to deal with the effects of the Tropical Storm Bret are: river control gangs are presently deployed across the country cleaning debris and in block watercourses. Clearing of major blockage in the Tacarigua River, where heavy equipment is currently in progress, and I must say that have been completed yesterday. Desilting of the Sipero River from crossing to Gulf City Link Road, which is in progress. Awaiting water levels to drop in the Oropouche Lagoon to assess the work to be done. Awaiting water levels to drop in the Karim Basin to assess work to be done. Awaiting water levels to drop in the North Oropouche River Basin to assess work to be done. And awaiting the water levels to recede in the Caparo Water Basin to assess the work to be done. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, are you aware that none of these rivers and natural watercourses were cleaned or cleared over the past year? That is true.
Members, order, order, order.
Madam Speaker, I started the answer to the question to say the Ministry of Works and Transport, through its Drainage Division, has an ongoing program of cleaning and desilting water courses. Thank you.
Member for Oropouche East.
Is the honourable member aware that over the past 20 months or so, absolutely no drainage work has been done in the Penal David area by the Drainage Division? You living in the drain, how you know that?
Not allow that as a supplemental question.
You living in the drain, how you know it, please?
Member for Couva South.
Madam Speaker, I'm forced to ask the Minister of Works and Transport, based on the plans of the Director of Drainage, could he advise this House what rivers have been cleaned as it relates to the Caroni River, the Oropouche and other areas in Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam Speaker, I keep repeating, there is an ongoing program. Works, cleaning water courses and drains have been going on throughout Trinidad, east, west, north and south, and central Trinidad and Tobago. Both by the regional corporation through the cleanup campaign and through the Ministry of Works through our work program. There's work going on throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and this has started a couple months ago, and this will continue. Thank you.
Oropouche East, question 3.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. To the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, could the Minister indicate what emergency actions have been taken to expedite the provision of housing repair grants to citizens badly affected by Tropical Storm Bret?
Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the relevant grant available to the public in these emergency situations is the Emergency Shelter Relief Grant. This grant is given to members of the public, applicants, to conduct emergency repairs to housing units. Madam Speaker, in the wake of Tropical Storm Bret, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, wrote to the Ministry of Finance requesting the urgent release of the balance of its allocation under the Emergency Shelter Relief Fund. The unit responsible for processing these applications stands ready to expedite all emergency shelter relief grant applications as fast as is practical.
Please, supplemental.
So, could the Minister of Housing then confirm that at this time you have no money for these emergency grants?
Development.
Madam Speaker, as a responsible government, the usual process is that supporting documents be attached to the request for the relief of funds, Madam Speaker. And when that is done, the releases are then given to the ministry by the Ministry of Finance.
Member for Oropouche East, supplemental.
Thank you very much. Would the Minister agree that a better approach would be to send your ministry staff through the regional corporations to assist residents with filling out their forms for these repair grants, rather than asking marooned residents and flooded people to write you a letter and request?
Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Madam Speaker, I would not agree with that. Madam Speaker, there must be some sort of accountability in the whole process. In the application, Madam Speaker, they must attach supporting evidence to indicate that they have suffered some sort of damage that would require emergency fund grant relief.
Caroni East, question number 4.
To the Minister of Finance, could the Minister state the measures that are being taken to ensure that there is equity, transparency, fair play and probity in the distribution of funds to victims of Tropical Storm Bret.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under this administration, there will be equity, transparency, fair play, and probity in the distribution of funds to all those who were affected by Tropical Storm Bret in accordance with the established procedures.
Member for Karim East Supplemental.
Would you consider making that information in terms of the distribution of funds public in the Parliament subsequent to the distribution of the funds for the relief in the various corporations?
Minister of Finance.
I would suggest you pose that as a question on notice.
Member for Karim East, question number 5.
To the Minister of Health, could the Minister state the measures that are being taken to effectively address the issues affecting workers in the dietary department of the Port of Spain General Hospital, which led to a protest by the employees recently on June 22nd, 2017?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to all. We started taking action as early as last week, Monday. Some of the actions taken: request for minor kitchen equipment, delivery effected as of this morning. Repairs to the steam generator, parts were ordered last week and are supposed to be delivered today. Once they are delivered today, they will be installed. There was an issue with a leaking roof. An external consultant has already been engaged, and once everything is okay, we go ahead with repairs to the roof. The long lead items such as blenders and meat saws and so on were already ordered about a week or two ago. Those are long lead items, and the procurement process is currently ongoing, and those items should be delivered within another week or two. So we took short-term actions within the past 24 hours, but we had some long lead items which we started dealing with since last week. So repairs to the generator, those parts were ordered last week. The blenders already ordered since last week. So we are addressing all the concerns of the kitchen staff.
Member for Karim East Supplemental.
Minister, could you indicate, with all of this information that you're providing to us, what would be the effective closure times to satisfy the members of the Dietary Services Department so that they would not be disgruntled as a result of the things that you're planning to do?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for the supplemental questions. In talks yesterday with the Chief Executive Officer and members of the kitchen staff, they are, as far as I'm aware, they are very happy with the response. They are happy with the short-term actions we have taken in minor equipment. They were told about the items that were ordered a week ago, and they have agreed to fulfill their duties, and I'm confident that we will do so. Thank you very much.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport, in light of the severe flooding and widespread dislocation caused by Tropical Storm Bret, could the Minister state what measures will be taken by his ministry to mitigate the adverse effects and impact of flooding in Trinidad and Tobago during the current rainy season?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Works and Transport started over the past few months embarking on a desilting and cleaning of water courses. This has been accelerated, and any breaches of the river banks will be attended to as necessary. Thank you.
Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, could the Minister inform this House what form of assistance will the National Commission for Self-Help Limited be providing to persons whose homes were severely affected by Tropical Storm Bret?
Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The National Commission for Self-Help makes available a grant facility called the Emergency Repair and Reconstruction Grant to mitigate against circumstances associated with natural disasters such as Tropical Storm Bret. Application forms can be accessed from the North, South and Tobago offices as well as many MP offices. And the self-help officers are also out in the affected areas, assisting regional corporation officials with assessments and directing affected persons to the availability of the grant.
Stone supplemental.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, in light of what you have indicated with respect to the outreach programme, could you also indicate whether or not this will affect squatters and what is government's position on squatters with respect to self-help?
Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Madam Speaker, as a requirement for receipt of the grant, there is either a deed, you have to add a deed, show land tenure by a deed or release, or a permission letter, or if you have been someone living on state land for greater than 16 years, you produce an affidavit to that respect.
Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, can you say whether or not the government has considered waiving any of these requirements in order to facilitate some of these squatters who may not have these documents in their possession?
Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Madam Speaker, thus far, over 140 persons have been visited by self-help officials. Approximately 50 grants applications have come in, and we are processing as it goes along, and we will determine, based on the applicants and the need, what is the necessity to consider or examine waiving any requirements.
Honourable members, the time for urgent questions is now spent.
Questions or notice? Questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we will be answering all questions for oral answer and also the one question for written answer. Thank you.
Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the member for Oropouche West, question number 135 to the Minister of Public Administration and Communication.
Minister of Public Administration and Communications.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are sufficient existing systems to address payment of gratuity for contract officers in the public service. The Human Resource and Finance Division at the various ministries and departments, as well as the Treasury Division, manage the process. Officers are guided by circular memoranda from central agencies such as the Personnel Department and use prescribed forms as stipulated by the Ministry of Finance for computation of the gratuity for payments to be effected by the Comptroller of Accounts, Ministry of Finance. Additionally, end dates for contracts are monitored and the necessary steps are initiated when due. Given that the system is sufficient, it is not necessary for any similar measures to be implemented for the payment of gratuity for contract officers as was implemented for public service pension payments. Thank you.
Member for Pointe-a-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 152 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Response to question number 152. The government currently provides a subsidy to Caribbean Airlines Limited for passengers on the Tobago Air Bridge. The amount paid is based on a fare differential of TT $50 for every adult revenue passenger over the age of 12 years who travels on the air bridge. The amount budgeted for fiscal 2017 is $650,250. However, for the years 2011 to 2017, the government provided the following financial assistance to Caribbean Airlines. For fiscal 2011, the government provided subsidy of $136,947,073 and transfers of $106,624,985, a total for fiscal 2011, when the last government was in place, of $243,572,058. For fiscal 2012, again under the last administration, the government provided loan guarantees in the total of $412,600,000 and subsidies of the tune of $726,548,840. Total subsidy to Caribbean Airlines in fiscal 2012 of $1,139,148,840. Fiscal 2013, again under the last administration, the government provided loan guarantees of $413,100,000, subsidies of $477,707,332, total subsidy to Caribbean Airlines in that year, fiscal 2013, $860,807,332. In fiscal 2014, subsidies amounted to $140,439,356, and transfers amounted to $859,635,274. Total subsidy to Caribbean Airlines in that year, fiscal 2014, under the last administration, $1,074,630. Again, in fiscal 2015, the total subsidy, $655,322,901. In 2016, total subsidy, $453,047,800. 2016, under this administration, total subsidy, $28,928,646, a reduction of several $billion. So the total over the period, Madam Speaker, under the last administration was in excess of $3 billion.
Plus the billion they found
Yes, in addition, they burnt up $1 billion in cash. The following steps are being undertaken at this time under this government to make CAL self-sufficient: implementing effective and meaningful cost management strategies, ensuring revenue enhancement strategies that would result in a break-even position, developing a strong brand for Caribbean Airlines, building the necessary corporate culture which was destroyed under the last government, and updating of a network plan to increase utilization of aircraft. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Dr. Chaguanas, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the Honourable Minister state whether can the Minister state whether the only route subsidized is the Trinidad and Tobago route, or are there any other routes subsidized either directly from central government or through the Tobago House of Assembly?
I can easily answer that, Madam Speaker. Let's take fiscal 2012 as an example. Total subsidy, $1.1 billion. Clearly, at least $1 billion of that was on the other routes that Caribbean Airlines flies. That's just one.
Member for Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 153 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it should be noted that the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is a signatory to the 1951 United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees and the accompanying 1967 protocol. These international agreements confer obligation on this country with respect to how it treats with persons who seek asylum here, and such obligations continue to be fulfilled. In addition to the foregoing, Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago has also instituted a number of measures aimed at strengthening its border management and control capacity so as to safeguard the country against the entry of illegal items and persons. The key agencies under the Ministry of National Security are the Immigration Division and the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. The Immigration Division continues to promote national security by effectively monitoring and controlling the movements of persons into, within, and out of the country. To this end, the division pursues a border policy that focuses on the entry into and exit from Trinidad and Tobago of all travelers who meet entry requirements, as well as identification and management of the risk to Trinidad and Tobago arising from those travelers who do not meet entry requirements. The Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, and in particular, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, also plays a significant role in safeguarding our borders against illegal immigrants. Some of the major strategic initiatives in this regard, Madam Speaker, is respect to strengthen our maritime security capabilities. To this end, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard continues to patrol our maritime waters throughout our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 maritime zones. Madam Speaker, additionally, within recent times, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard had engaged in a specific training with the British Royal Navy, a 2-week training that dealt with issues of seamanship, manpower organization, planning, and command considerations. To that effect, it has strengthened the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard ability to safeguard our territorial waters and maintain maritime security. Additionally, the utilization of the National Coastal Surveillance Radar System has also provided the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard in particular with the capacity to continuously monitor Trinidad and Tobago's territorial waters, as well as the ability to identify vessels of interest for interceptions. Madam Speaker, a strong focus has also been placed on partnering with Venezuela. As you know, Madam Speaker, this government has re-established the bilateral cooperation with Venezuela in the area of security, among others. It has included the establishment of person-to-person contact between the commanding officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard and the commander of the Guardia Costa and the Guardia Nacional to ensure a comprehensive and a collaborative approach to the situation. In particular, initiatives include aggressive sourcing of and increased efforts to share intelligence relevant to the unfolding situation. Other initiatives, Madam Speaker, include a memorandum of intent between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States, which was signed in April 2017, to provide for the establishment of a personal identification, secure comparison, and evaluation system, referred to as PICES. This state-of-the-art border control system will document the arrival and departure of international travelers at airports and seaports in Trinidad and Tobago. Consequently, it will increase the ability of the Immigration Division to verify a traveler's identity against both domestic and international databases and watch lists, and also allow officials to identify individuals who might pose a threat to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago's security. Ongoing Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force joint operations along the south coast, from Guayagüari to Seagrass, maritime patrols by Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, mobile patrols by the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, aerial surveillance by the Trinidad and Tobago Air Guard, and additional support by Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force Reserve continues to play a part in so far as border management is concerned. Madam Speaker, we also include the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in terms of land-based patrol coordinated together with the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. So therefore, it's a joint effort, Madam Speaker, to deal with issues pertaining to the border of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, could the Minister tell us the number of Venezuelans who are illegally in Trinidad and Tobago? Are they being monitored actively? And how many have been repatriated in the last 6 months?
Member, I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Karim East.
Asked by my colleague.
Member for Point of View.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 154 to the Minister of Trade and Industry.
Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The bilateral commercial arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago's manufacturers and Corpovex, which is Venezuela's state purchasing agency, is still an active mechanism for trade between both countries. To date, contracts valued at approximately US $20 million of manufactured goods, consisting mainly of food items, white rice, tomato ketchup, chicken, mayonnaise, powdered milk, margarine, flour, pasta, laundry, and the personal hygiene products, laundry detergent, bath soap, and toilet tissue paper were signed. The contracts signed under the first 3-month period were valued at US $12.3 million, and contracts signed in the second 3-month period were valued at US $7.7 million. The total order of goods under the second 3-month framework contracts have not yet been fulfilled. The TTMA has estimated that actual trade which took place under the second 3-month framework contract to date stands at US $2.26 million. The Ministry of Trade and Industry has been collaborating with the private sector, given the importance of the Venezuelan market for the expansion of domestic exports. Notwithstanding the above, Venezuela has signaled an interest in expanding the list of products to be traded under the agreement. Thank you.
Point of View supplemental.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Supplemental to the Minister. Is the Minister aware that a lot of the manufacturers that have done business with Venezuela are still awaiting payment?
Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you. That is not so. All of those who were paid under the first 3-month arrangements, all of those contractual arrangements had been settled. Under the second month, there are residual payments. As you know, down payments are made in a percentage amount, so it's not at all a question of all payments outstanding or anything like that or substantial amount. down payments. In other words, to begin the contractual arrangement, substantial down payments of more than 50% are made. This is under the second tier, and then a further amount. So it's residual amounts that are outstanding. This relationship is very important to Trinidad and Tobago, and the TTMA is working along with the ministry to ensure that all of the bureaucracy is ironed out and payments are up to date. This market is very important to this country.
The whip.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the member of Oropouche West, question number 161 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, according to the information provided by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, no statement was made by that organization identifying car parks at shopping malls and hospitals as the main hunting ground for car thieves. Rather, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service cited large car parks, such as those in the shopping malls and hospitals, as examples of areas that are targeted for vehicle theft. Based on information provided by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, of the 1,160 vehicles reported stolen during the period January 1st, 2016 to April 30th, 2017, 91 or 8% was stolen from car parks, while 125 or 11% of such reported thefts occurred at residential properties. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service recognizes that vehicle theft, like other serious crimes, must be monitored to determine the frequency of incident and to detect trends that may be used in designing strategies to address the problem. Some of the initiatives being undertaken by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in regards to these include partnership and collaboration with stakeholders. Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has held meetings with the management of hospitals and security services of shopping malls in an effort to minimize the risk of car theft. At these meetings, special emphasis is placed on improving the security of parking areas by target hardening through specific actions such as improved lighting, camera coverage, general security, sharing safety tips for persons parking, and strengthening of the security at entrance and exit points. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has also increased the number of police patrols conducted in and around these areas. They also include sensitizations and educations. These initiatives, which are publicized through various forms of media, including the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service media briefings, social media, and website. The website, www.ttps.gov.tt. It raises awareness among the public by providing information on how best to minimize the risk of stolen vehicles. Trinidad and Tobago Police Service also provides safety tips. Vehicle safety tips are available to the public on the TTPS website and several other forums, such as community meetings. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, Madam Speaker, is optimistic that these initiatives will bear fruit and will continue to work with the relevant stakeholders and to monitor the situation and take steps as necessary to minimize incidents of vehicle theft. Madam Speaker.
The Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the member for Oropouche West, question number 162 to the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With regards to question 162, the information provided by the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago, the total cost of the launch of the Brian Lara Academy was $2,416,103. That was broken up among three organizations: the Ministry of Sport, which spent $1.9 million, the Sport Company, which spent $299,643,000, and Udicot, $119,000. Part B of the question, the total profit generated is $724,700. That was broken up between ticket sales, sponsorship, and the rental of the party stand. And to answer Part C, the rental cost of the facilities for private entities is being determined by the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs and will be subsequently sent to the Cabinet for final approval.
Member for Princess Down. Supplemental question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, in light of the figure that you gave, could you indicate whether or not that includes players' fees from regional and international players, together with their accommodation and whatever other expenses would have been incurred?
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Yes, it is inclusive of those fees. I could give a breakdown. It's a lot of information, but appearance fees, airfare, accommodation, and broadcast, $964,000. Cricket event, logistics, $281,000. Marketing, $495,000. Advertising, $19,000. And groundsman, $13,000.
Come to the game.
Thank you, Madam.
Member for Caroni East. The whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the member for Oropouche West, again, question number 163 to the Minister of Tourism.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Tourism, Madam Speaker, the tourism industry has the potential to significantly contribute to the national economy once its potential is maximized. In 2016, the revenue generated by visitor arrivals to Trinidad and Tobago was estimated at $2.232 billion based on the data collected from the Tourism Baseline Survey in Trinidad. Foreign exchange was generated in the major categories of accommodation, entertainment, tours and sightseeing, and culinary. In fiscal 2017, the ministry continued efforts to develop and promote the tourism sector with a view to increasing the foreign revenue earnings through visitor expenditure. For fiscal 2017, the government undertook a review of the institutional arrangement with respect to marketing and product development. The Ministry of Tourism also implemented projects under its marketing subvention and its development program. A status of these projects is as follows. The development and launch of the Go Trinbago app and Lime 365. This is the creation of a mobile app which allows for creating the visitor's personalized vacation and experience. It includes a calendar of events highlighting festivities and events that occur every day of the year. The app has been completed and is available for download in the Android and the iOS App Store. The Tourism Baseline Survey, the status of that is that there has been the collection and analysis of data relating to visitor expenditure, employment in primary tourism business, levels of skills and training, and data will allow for policy and program development, which is based on market intelligence. As of today, Madam Speaker, the data collection in Trinidad has been completed. Over 35,000 international visitors were sampled with respect to the visitor expenditure component, and 208 primary tourism businesses were interviewed with respect to the employment levels, skills, and training. The Trinidad report will be completed in July 2017. Madam Speaker, the establishment of the Trinidad and Tobago Regulatory and Licensing Authority. The procurement of a consultant to provide services has been started and is underway. With regard to the Maracas Beach Community Tourism Initiative, the installation of ticketing booths and barriers, CCTV, paving of the car park, and implementation of paid parking. The scope of works has been completed, and activities are all to be completed by the end of fiscal 2017. With regard to Las Cuevas Beach Enhancement Project, the activity to be completed is the infrastructural work on the car park. The scope of works has been completed, and these activities are expected to be completed by the end of fiscal 2017. Regarding the Manzanilla Beach Facade Improvement Project, the scope of works has been completed, and the activities are all to be completed by the end of fiscal 2017. And these are the installation of the new perimeter fencing, LED security lighting, the implementation of paid parking infrastructure, the upgrade of the guard booth, and other minor activities. With regard to the Vestany Beach Facility Upgrade Project, The scope of works has been completed and all activities will be completed in fiscal 2017. And these are the addition of a family washroom, the construction of gazebos, and the implementation of paid parking. The project listed as upgrade of sites and attractions. The upgrade and sites and attractions identified in collaboration with cities, boroughs, and regional corporations is in the process of being determined and will be completed over the period 2017 to 2019. The domestic tourism campaign stay to get.
Member for Point-a-Pair, supplemental.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I apologize. Can I ask the Minister if she had answered part A of that question in her response?
No. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I answered part B of the question because that is the one with more information to give. And consequently, there was a need to get into that. There was a need to get into that answer before going to A. With regard to A, we are
Oropouche East, supplemental question.
No, ma'am, they're still in the process of negotiation.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Question number 164 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the total amount paid to date on the school improvement project for the Laverdale community is $1,223,574.94. Thank you.
Member for Chaguanas East, supplemental.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister indicate which contractor was paid and the amount, and which ones are outstanding and the amounts?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, so far only one contractor has been paid, and he has been paid the sum of $510,000. There is payment for 3 other contractors.
Member for Chaguanas East, supplemental.
Can the Minister indicate the names of those contractors, please?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, I don't have those names at my disposal, but I can make them available to the member.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 165 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, the University of Trinidad and Tobago has advised that while it is exploring options to achieve efficiencies in its operations and to rebalance its operating costs with revenues by 2019-2020, at this time, there are no concrete plans to reduce the university staff and campuses for the academic years 2018 to 2020. Thank you.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Question number 166 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, funds expended on the University of Trinidad and Tobago Tamina campus from the start of this project in 2008 to May 2017 total $1,581,783,999.02. These funds were utilized to facilitate payments for works completed, services rendered, and the goods procured for the project as follows. 1. Infrastructural works for the campus, inclusive of roads, drainage, fencing, utilities, and other external works. 2. Building construction, inclusive of foundation and steel structure, other subcontract works, and the central plant buildings. 3, furniture, and 4, consultancy services. The project was 82% complete as of May 31st, 2017. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, can you indicate by when you expect the facility to be available, open to staff and to students?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, again, I cannot give a definite date for the completion of this project, but we are hoping that by 2018, the end of 2018, we might have some final determination where this is concerned. Thank you.
Member for Princestown. Question 169.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, question number 169.
Prime Minister.
You what? Madam Speaker, as soon as the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago decides what will be the final use for Stallmeyer's Castle, it will be announced to the population. However, it should be noted that as soon as this administration came in place, one of the first sub-cabinet committees under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister was the restoration of historical buildings, of which Stallmeyer's Castle is but one. And the population would have noted that under the former administration, they left a series of buildings to decay and did nothing about them, including Stallmeyer's Castle. And they did the White House, the President's House, Millefleur, and others. So this administration considers it very important to preserve the historical history of these houses. Well, if you all had left money, we would be able to.
Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, you must admit that considerable amount of work was done on Stallmeyer's Castle, started by the People's Partnership Administration. But the question is, in light of what you have indicated, could you say if one of those considerations for the use of Stallmeyer's Castle is for the Prime Minister's office?
I will not allow that question. A response was given already. Oropouche East.
To the Honourable Minister answering here, are you aware that extensive work has already started on Stallmeyer's Castle and Whitehall and await completion?
I'll allow it in terms of Stallmeyer's Castle.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I said, when we came in, the work had been stretched out and we have brought it almost to completion. We expect it to be completed shortly. But what I will tell the population is under them, there was an inflation of price, an inflation of cost, and Whitehall, nothing was done. They may have paid money and mobilization fees, but nothing was done.
Member for Chaguanas West, supplemental.
However, Minister, having viewed the work at Stallmeyer's Castle, are you satisfied with the quality of work done?
Member?
No. Madam, the answer is no. And the government was not satisfied, nor were the consultants satisfied. In fact, right now, we had a meeting last week where there's a great level of dissatisfaction with the current work done, and we've asked them to redo it. And there is going to be an investigation into the expenditure of monies that there was no value given for. Don't worry with the 10 years.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to seek leave to raise a matter of definite urgent public importance. Madam, I sent this in as required time at about minutes to 12, 90 minutes ago, or more than 90 minutes ago, and since then, this matter has become more urgent. I have just received a notice from the Ministry of Works. They've closed off one lane of the southbound highway and so on. So this matter is definite, and it's namely the failure of government to provide adequate resources and relief in a timely, effective, and efficient manner to alleviate hardship, suffering, anguish, and distress of the population in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Bret. The matter is definite because it pertains specifically to the failure of government to address flooding, destruction, devastation and damage that was inflicted on the population by Tropical Storm Bret. Many areas have suffered the effects of the storm. I see the matter as urgent because the suffering and hardship that has been visited upon the citizens of our country by Bret is increasing with each passing day. People are unable to provide food for their families. Homes in entire areas have been destroyed. There is an urgent need to provide water. Families need urgent help to clean up their homes and drain it of contaminated water, debris and silt. Men, women and children who live in these areas which were flooded are at risk of contracting diseases. The matter is of public importance because there are tens of thousands of families who are currently suffering as a result of the destruction and flooding that has resulted from Tropical Storm Bret. The storm has transformed the affected parts of our country into virtual disaster zones, and the suffering that has been inflicted is immeasurable and is continuing. Madam Speaker, I thank you and I so move.
Honourable members, I have considered the motion of the Leader of the Opposition, and I am satisfied that this matter qualifies to be raised as a definite matter of urgent public importance. This matter also requires the leave of the House. Is the House prepared to grant leave? Yes. Honourable members, leave having been granted in accordance with Standing Order 17.4, the debate on this motion will stand over until 6 p.m.
Statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions related to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, government business, bills second reading.
Honourable members, the debate on the second reading of the following bill, which was adjourned on Wednesday, June 14, 2017, will be resumed. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches of the Act, to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system, a demerit point system, and the reform of the fixed penalty system, and related legal proceedings, and other matters, and other related matters, be now read a second time. The members who have already contributed to this bill: Honourable Faris Alwari, MP, the mover of the bill; Dr. Suruj Ratan Rambachan, MP, member for Tabakit; Mr. Barry Padarat, MP, member for Princestown; Honourable Fitzgerald Hines, MP, member for Laventille West; Mrs. Vidya Gayadeen Gopi Singh, MP, member for Oropouche West; Honourable Maxi Cuffy, MP, member for La Hokata Talparo, member for Oropouche.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute on this matter before us. An act to amend the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches of the Act, to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system, a demerit point system, and the reform of the fixed penalty system and related legal proceedings and other related matters. Madam Speaker, I've had the opportunity to review the contributions made by all colleagues on the last occasion and to indicate that this matter before us is a very critical matter. Indeed, that we meet today on a Friday in the context of enormous and excessive rainfall. The international cricket has come to a halt at the Oval. We are told that one lane on the highway is in operation at this time. We don't know how and when we will get home today. And ongoing murder, rain, flood. And this measure is another. Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Before they get to 48.1, if it's that. 48.1. Now I speak about the flood of fines and penalties that the government will now introduce. I think I could speak of that. Now, I want to begin by quoting not the first speaker on this bill, but I think the third or fourth. The member for Laventille West, short-lived Minister of Works and Transport, spoke on this matter, and I couldn't help but notice the description of this bill, Madam Speaker. The member said it was the most elaborate and magnificent piece of legal infrastructure, absolutely well laid out. He commended the philosophy, principle, and so on. And then, of course, he added that he was responsible for the policy when he spent some time at that ministry. After doing such a good job, he was removed by the Prime Minister. And he praised his ministry and himself that he was partly responsible for this, and made some other points which I'll reflect on as we proceed. Madam Speaker, far from that, I will argue that this matter is not a simple matter. It is not presented with any elegance. It is not presented in any clearly comprehensible manner. By virtue of it being a bill that seeks to repeal one law but work in the context of another law. So what we have here is repealing of one act of parliament which dealt with administration and enforcement, and working it into a parent body, 4850, and spelling out fines, spelling out a new demerit system, dealing with red light traffic offenses and so on. By definition, it cannot be a cohesive, comprehensive piece of legislation. It is something that when you sit to read, you must read carefully in collaboration with the parent, in collaboration with the act you are going to repeal. You must read in the context of the legality, of the policy, of the social consequences of this, and of an overall philosophy of what you're doing. The Attorney General has now brought us yet another cliche, which he introduces now on every occasion that he has the opportunity, to speak about law and culture. And this belief that in the 20 short months they have been there, for many 20 long months, that they have been able to use law to change culture. And these pieces of legislation like this, they try to position that this is using law to change culture. Law cannot change culture. And it is wrong to begin with that premise. Enforcement of law can change culture. In this country, there's a law. It is unlawful to kill someone. That is the law. How much murders we have today? 200 and what? 50?
820-something since then.
820-something since they came in office. But the law is very clear. It is unlawful to kill someone. How come the law on murder didn't change the culture? It cannot. It is the enforcement of law and the environment that will give change, that will bring change. The same person, there's a famous story people give, the same citizen who is walking into Port of Spain and will run across the road, and when you come up, you creep up with your car in the traffic, the person will look at you and say, "Bounce me na." That same person, 3 hours later, goes on a flight to Miami, Florida. Will they do that in Florida? Jaywalk and tell a citizen in America, "Bounce me na"? They can't do that. There's a different environment. There's a punitive environment, yes, but there's a culture of enforcement, and they will get bounced. They'll have a collision. So having this overall belief that law will change culture is furthest from the truth. It is your enforcement, it is your education, it is your social outreach programs, it is connecting to target groups, if you can find that, and so on. In fact, there is now this piece of legislation in collaboration with others creates this very punitive environment that the government is developing now, where we are presuming that everyone is guilty, everyone is a criminal, and we now challenge you to prove you're innocent. So at first glance, you are a criminal, and I challenge you now, prove that you are innocent. So we take the 100 traffic offenses and fixed penalty offenses are in this. Well, let's use the word violations, because I think that is the name they're calling it. There are 100, and I will come to that as well, that 100 offenses. Right? And you are creating this culture of a punitive environment. where almost the state becomes almost like a Gestapo arm, going onto the roads looking for everybody who might be breaking one of 100 offenses. Then law will come where if you wear a gold chain or 2-3 gold chain, we need to find out where you get the money to buy it from. That means you might arrest every West Indies fast bowler. If you have a house, we want to know where you get it from. If you have a car, where you get it from. You know, this culture, not that you will investigate and prove a wrongdoing, but at first glance we look at you and you are a criminal. So prove to us that you are innocent. And this is the culture that is now feeding. It is a very dangerous culture. I don't know from what jurisdiction it is coming. I do not know from which other foreign territory this is coming from, but it is a dangerous culture to develop, where you take innocent people, presume that they are guilty, and work the other way around, and create a punitive environment. I mean, somebody who, I will come to it in detail, if you have a light blow on your park light, you know the cost of the bulb is $3? You know the fine is $450 for that? And they are working backwards to prosecute, to create this punitive framework, and just fine after fine after fine, and demerit points, we will get to that system as well. But some people, I imagine, can argue, well, that is progressive. But the Attorney General, in piloting this motion, within his first 19 words of 40-something thousand words, told us that this thing, in fact, we were concerned at first glance. You saw a Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act. We were looking for the Minister of Works. The Minister of Works, who should be at large now, we are looking for him. We could not find him. But then in the first 19 words, the Attorney General tell us, this is the continuation of government's reform exercise with respect to our criminal justice system. It is to deal with the administration of justice. It is to really use the best use of police time, to redeploy police and get a focus for the police. It is about that. So, Madam Speaker, we must not fall into the trap of believing this is only about road traffic and motor vehicle. This is about using police time. It is about the administration of justice. It is one approach, as the Attorney General tells us, in dealing with his suite or menu of legislation to deal with administration of justice, and we'll speak on that as well. So Madam Speaker, and he tells us, of course, about the architecture as usual and so on, and the other pieces of work that they are doing, and so on. Proportionality and so on. But Madam Speaker, to get to some of the issues I want to raise, and I want to put on record, I want to raise this matter of this red line, the matter of the demerit point system. I want to raise some issues concerning the fines and some issues concerning the constitutionality of the bill itself, because a major issue that has arisen is the issue of law and constitutionality, and the movement, the attempt to decriminalize certain offenses. But Madam Speaker, in the contribution of Lavantil West, I was not in the chamber at the time, but the member for Lavantil West, Madam Speaker, could not help, he could not help but call my name. When I was growing up, I thought my name was hard to pronounce. It is now among the most popular for the other side. Madam Speaker, he quotes an article from the Sunday Express, this member for Lavantil West, and is saying now that I am on record in an article on the Sunday Express of March, and I have the complete article here, March 3rd, Madam Speaker. There's a headline, "Government has failed on crime. Call a general election," says Moonilal. And Madam Speaker, without reading the entire article, because it's not practical to do that, the member for Lavantil West accused me of saying in this article that I am accusing the government of using these measures to raise revenue. And he goes to defend it as a revenue measure. Madam Speaker, I've read this entire article by one Susan Mohammed. Not once in this article did I raise any issue of revenue-raising initiatives of the government. I condemn the government and their failure to deal with serious crime, including murder, and I condemn a few people as usual, but absolutely nothing. And to think that the member for Lavantil West would have that in his throat, but would misquote an article. It is, Madam Speaker, I'm looking for a proper parliamentary term, but it's an untruthful recidivism on his part. that he returns to this type, I think I can use that, untruthful recidivism of Lavantil West, that you will use an article in the newspaper and completely fabricate that. And I start with that because I was taken aback. But Madam Speaker, that is not to deny that this measure will also, if implemented the way it is, will also have the ability to raise significant revenue for the government. Significant revenue. And in raising significant revenue, the opposition should speak as well on what purpose are you going to put to the revenue that you are making, to the revenue that you will derive from such a measure. You see, Madam Speaker, nothing is wrong, as the member for Lavantil West told us, nothing is wrong with raising revenue, but if the revenue raised would not be properly used for in the context in which it was raised, the revenue to be raised, the revenue from violations on the road, traffic violations, would the money be used to repair roads? Would it be used to clear drains and rivers? Because roads are destroyed today, it is a glaring and dramatic example of the destruction of roads caused by poor drainage. And if the monies, and I want to spell out some of the, Madam Speaker, I have estimated, and I will go through the maths in a little while, that if implemented in the current form, this government can raise, by these punitive measures, in excess of $2.1 billion per year. They can raise. Where is that money going to be spent? Is it going to be roaming charges? It is going to be bed and hotel in Tobago? Is it going to be $2.5 million to cut a ribbon to open something? I mean, a $1.3 billion stadium took $2.5 million to cut ribbon. And they're happy with that. But are you going to raise the money from the road and traffic to fix the drains, fix the roads? And I am proposing, and I suggest to the Minister of Works and Transport, that a fraction of this, 25% or so, or 50%, raised from the road and traffic fines, 100 different violations here, be used to create a fund to clear the drains and to fix the roads and keep these things in a state of repair. Madam Speaker, I can say without a doubt that had there been a regular program of clearing drains and river courses and fixing roads, we would not have this catastrophe that we have today. And the traffic. Madam Speaker, I have some early concerns which I'll try to move with quickly. Now, in part 5A, number 34, I want to ask the government, we are raising some concerns. It is a complex piece of work. So we are raising questions. I pray that the government don't take this approach that when the opposition raise questions, they get vexed and they quarrel. When we support them, they quarrel. When we don't support, they quarrel. And the government is now in a default mode of getting vexed. Everything gets you vexed. A reporter asked the Prime Minister where he was for 3 days. He tell the reporter, you're sounding like my wife. You get vexed for everything. So when I ask these questions, don't get vexed. Don't insult. It is for clarity. Now, inspection officer is a critical line here. Inspection officer is critical. It means a constable, transport officer, or traffic warden certified by the Commissioner of Police, and so on. I'll come to that. Now, I want to get to this traffic warden. It's a program introduced or expanded, I think, during our term in government. Introduced by us, the traffic warden. It came with a commendation. It was a very progressive approach to take some work away from the police and empower persons, create jobs as well, and so on. But that needs to be taken further. It needs to be taken further. It needs to be strengthened. It needs to be put into a certain legal frame to protect employees, to enhance their payments. I think their salary, unless I'm mistaken, is less than $5,000 a month. So persons who are earning less than $5,000 a month, persons who have entry-level qualifications for the purpose that we established this for, are now being asked to become an inspection officer. The effect of this legislation is to elevate a traffic warden to an inspection officer. Now, somebody making $4,700 per month is inadequate. You know that. Many of these traffic wardens, rightly so, moonlight in the night and do other jobs. In fact, I know some people work as barmen and waitresses in the night and so on to supplement their income, because traffic warden is not a job that carries the salary, carry the benefits and so on. And you are now calling them inspection officer, but not providing for any upgrade in terms and conditions of work, in facilities. And the traffic warden in this context undertakes work in the context of punitive measures, sanctions on behalf of the state, moving material from their desk to the court. Traffic warden. Should we be allowing contract workers, because I think they are contract workers, they are not full-time paid public servants, they are not civil servants, they are not public officers defined in the law. I stand corrected, but I do not think traffic wardens are public officers as defined in our laws. They are on contract. Many contracts have not been renewed, where they continue on month to month. You are now going to call them inspection officer, put them to do a work, and indicate that the Commissioner of Police must certify that they are trained to analyze and certify the authenticity of photographic images and video recording. So they have to certify that photographic evidence and video is authentic, is real, is true. What training are you going to provide for them now? What training? Who's to do this training? If the commissioner has to certify them as a technical officer, that carries certain implications for their work, for their terms and conditions. Also, should contract officers be doing this type of work, sanctioning and being part of a state machinery, prosecutorial in that sense, without being put on an even keel, as at least a supplemental police would have terms and conditions. This can lead to enormous abuse of these workers, of traffic wardens. Enormous abuse this could lead to. They could be asked to do things, to be corrupt, to undertake wrongdoing, when they are exposed as contract officers, where they don't know on the first of every month whether they're working or they're not working, whether they're coming or going. And that is a concern that I wanted to raise. So you are going now to say that they have certain responsibility. As a constable, as a transport officer, I believe under the Act, we also know what is a transport officer. Madam Speaker, the bill provides an area which I want to get into quickly, the red light camera system. Now, if I ask the government, because I've tried and somehow I couldn't find out, how many traffic lights we have in this country? If somebody knows, I would like to find out. How many do we really have? When we were in office, our emphasis was to remove traffic lights. We removed traffic lights from the market in Port of Spain, Rising Road, straight down to Debe. Yeah. You have no traffic light. And once you stop, in fact, once you clear the Port of Spain market, the next time you see a traffic light is by my constituency office. That is the next time you see a traffic light, because you have, so the movement around the world is to remove traffic lights. Now, with this measure, they are going to introduce red light camera systems and technology to ticket you when you break the red light, presumably. How much traffic lights do we have in this country? We have plenty. Are we putting this system in all? Or is it to be is it some on main roads, on highway areas? Clearly, you can't be putting a this type of thing all in back roads where you have traffic lights by school and so on. Listen, you are trying, and when they were moving this, they talk about common sense. In fact, they were quoting the Chief Justice. I don't know if it's fashionable to quote him now, but they were quoting the Chief Justice.
They're hiding from that.
On using common sense approach. In fact, the Attorney General said this is a common sense approach. What is the common sense approach? Asking single mothers working in the hospitality sector, going home in late hours, in the dark hours, to stop by every traffic light in a hot spot? And if you break that traffic light, you get a ticket and then you get a points deducted system and you lose your license. Is that common sense? In fact, common sense is not to stop by the traffic light. You could be robbed. So the government has to tell us, is this going to be implemented across the board? Will there be some system for the dark hours in certain zones that the traffic lights will be blinking and you can proceed with caution? Because as it is now, people don't stop by traffic light in the night. They slow down and they gradually ease up, creep up until it turns green. So, Madam Speaker, this red light camera system has to be properly thought out. I know the technology exists. You travel abroad, you'll see it. But in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, you cannot impose everything you see in Europe and in North America and put it here. In North America, when you drive along the roadways and highway, you will see a police vehicle park up waiting for you. If you break the light or they suspect you. This is Trinidad and Tobago. When you stop at a traffic light, bandits could attack you. People can hold you up, they can rob you, they can kill you. This is a place where police are chasing people with high-power military guns and so on. This is a place where so you have a system now in place where you will stop everybody, and if you break the light, you get a ticket in the mail, as they say, by TT Post and so on. You have to reconsider whether that is practical and common sense to be introducing across the board in this country at a time like this. And what makes this complex as well when you read this is that everything carries some time frame. 8 days to be followed by 30 days, to be followed in the next situation of 60 days, to be followed by 40 days. There's a lot of timelines here. But you know, there's no timeline for the government agencies to respond to you. Huh? This requires education. This requires education. This requires communication. This requires a hands-on approach. I hope it's not the same hands-on approach that they have with the flooding, because as of now, we can safely say not one human being has received a grant in this flood for this entire week from any government agency. Is this the same management you will bring to the traffic laws? Is it the same management you will bring where several key delivery ministers have not delivered one single grant? The Prime Minister came to our area, he came without his shadow, not a grant, not a hamper. In fact, when he was flying through with his Prado, he wet up a lot of people who were already suffering from the flood. Is that the same approach you will use, Madam Speaker, when you try to implement this lack of preparedness? The first matter is the government should tell us what type of education program you have in place to educate motorists on these matters. I made a gentle inquiry to someone in the know, and I am told, I asked a simple question: how many human beings in this country, citizens of the country, have a driver's permit? You know what I was told? 1 million. 1 million citizens of this country have a driver's permit. But the person also tell me be a little careful with that, because they do not have a proper system in place yet to remove you from their system at the license division for death. Yeah. So when people die, if John Smith would have been 92 yesterday, but he died 20 years ago, they probably still have the record that John Smith carries a valid driver's permit or an expired permit, as the case may be. It should be expired. But if you die, there's no proper system in place. And Madam Speaker, I'm thinking of that. You don't have the choreography, the link between the Ministry of Legal Affairs to report that so that you can take them off your system with driver's permit. And now you are creating a massive database of 1 million people with driver's permit to do a registry of the merit system for points. That's right. In fact, where all of us who carry a driver's permit will be on that system. So 1 million driver's permit people. And do we have an education program, an awareness program in place? I pray to God it's not one like what they introduced to the property tax, where the Court of Appeal had to tell them what to tell the people. So the government should tell us, we intend to implement an education program. And the Martin Northeast can come with his normal arrogance and so on, but that will not help us to decipher what is happening here. The population and motorists and so on need to be told how this is set up, what are the fines, how the system intends to work. Because, Madam Speaker, I don't have time to go in detail, but you look at 79H, for example, under provision 34, you look at 79H, service of citation notice. You get a citation notice, well, they told us what is that. It must be delivered to each owner or some adult member of his family at his usual or last place of residence. Now, it's an interesting part, and we'll come to the legality. Madam Speaker, if I am the owner of a vehicle, I never drove that vehicle in my life, I own it. Someone who is authorized to drive it, or who satisfies the insurance requirement and has a valid driver's permit, is driving that vehicle. Do you know I could lose the driver's permit I have and I have never driven that vehicle? Because they have indicated that the owner of a vehicle carries the responsibility, not the driver. In fact, this is a situation where for 100 traffic offenses, the driver carries no blame. It is the owner, St. Augustine? I think so. And you know, you will have an opportunity, all government members, to respond. If you are an owner, you carry the responsibility for the vehicle. But as it is now, but the existing law don't bring this demerit point system in place. It don't bring this demerit point system where the owner can lose his license who never drove a car or never drove that vehicle in his life. And they will serve it and so on, and deliver by TT Post and find the people and so on. I have no problem with that, they can do that. And you see, this is the attitude, they get vexed. You ask for grant, they get vexed. You tell them stop, deal with flooding, they get vexed. You ask them to provide help, they quarrel. What is he doing?
Members, could we remember that we're in Parliament and conduct ourselves with the decorum that is required? Member Fadigo Martin, Northeast, were you rising on a point of order? Please continue, Member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, yeah, before he got put out, I think he left. Madam Speaker, so there is a program to serve, there's a service and so on. But you know, I want to make this blanket point that one of the objectives of this bill is to take away the work of the police, reduce their work, and the magistrate court. And they are good, laudable objectives. But when you read this measure, the constable has enormous work to do. Enormous work to do enormous work tasks are given to a constable in this new piece measure. So I'm not sure to what extent you are reducing the burden on the police officers. I'm not sure how that will work at all. So, oh dear. So, Madam Speaker, the citation notice comes, they deliver it, and there's a process you pay. You can pay online, we are being told, and so on. So that is fine. If you decide to object, you do a notice to that effect as well, where you also have to serve as a kind of system where you have to present yourself. Nobody comes for you, you present yourself. And you go to the requisite court and you argue why it is that you should not be paying. There are two grounds for not paying, and I will have to move quickly because there's a lot more we want to say. Two grounds for not paying. One is that you are not the owner of the car, and the second is that the car was stolen. But I say car, the vehicle. The vehicle has been stolen. Now, clearly, you would report that to the police. It will not be a case like NLCB board where they say they got a threat, didn't report it to the police, and then take all the money for security. You report it to the police, so the police has a record that a vehicle is stolen. Or you say, well, the vehicle is not mine. It was transferred already. I'm not the owner. Two very restricted, limited limb upon which you can come forward and so on. And you do that, and you serve your notice and so on. Again, we want to raise this issue of the qualifications of persons and training requirements. And I want to ask the overall question.
Member for Oropouche, your original 30 minutes are now expired. You're entitled to 15 more minutes. If you intend to avail yourself of it, you can proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, the training requirements, and I want to ask a blanket question. I won't have time to go in detail. What is the human resource requirement for this legislation? How many more people must be hired at the transport division? How many more traffic wardens must be hired? How many more administrative staff, IT staff? Because there's a huge human resource demand from this piece of legislation. If you're going to create a system that has a registry for 1 million persons with a driver's permit, that is a massive system to inform the court. The court informs the transport division liaises with the court. You are creating almost a new ministry to manage that. And is the bureaucracy in place? What are your plans to deal with that? That's a very important point when it is. Madam Speaker, coming to the money now. You see, the member for Lavantil West stumbled on it. The member for Lavantil West alerted us to development where he said that he had data, and we have no reason to doubt his data, Madam Speaker. He said that one traffic light, I believe it's the traffic light right here near the chamber, Ryson Road, 1 traffic light, 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 1 traffic li In January, there were 3,900 violations. 3,900 violations. And he gives us every month, on average, I want to say, Madam Speaker, let's say 4,000 violations per month by one traffic light. What is the amount of money for a traffic violation? I think it's $1,000. In this new measure? 5,000. $5,000 at 9,000 violations at one light per month.
75 million.
Multiply by 12 months.
900 million.
$900 million for one light violations? That can't be right. So something is wrong even with the presentation that they give us here. Let's assume it is in the old system, $1,000. You have 4,000 violations at one light. At $1,000, 4 million a month by 12 months, 48, multiply by 25 traffic lights, assuming that you're going to do up 25 traffic lights. You see how much money we are talking about per year? And that is only for one offense, one out of, so we have 99 more offenses to look at, to raise money. This is why I suggested that this is a multi-billion-dollar scheme to raise money to manage their deficit. That is what this is about. And whether they admit it or not, we are very concerned with what would this money be used for. And they will tell us in a flippant way, well, to balance the budget, you know, they will be telling us that. Madam Speaker, I want to go quickly to some of these offenses. Schedule, the 9th schedule, I think it is, the 9th schedule. We have, Madam Speaker, we have several offenses. And while I appreciate Lavantil West saying and the Attorney General that there was a massive interagency collaboration and everybody met and everybody discussed and signed off and they were beating their chests how happy they were and so on. Madam Speaker, some of these offenses and these violations, when you look at the fixed penalty, the demerit point system, they are out of sync with each other. They are out of sync. Madam Speaker, I'm going to say it roughly now, subject to one or two minor. Accumulate 20 demerit points, you over a period of time, you lose your license for 2 years. 20 demerit points. Madam Speaker, if you fail to take instructions from a police, you lose 6. That's a police telling you at a traffic light to turn left, you misunderstand what he said, that's 6 gone. Madam Speaker, if you have a child in the back seat and you don't have a proper booster seat, which you have to buy, nobody buying that for you, buy it yourself. 4 more, that's 10. Madam Speaker, they have another one here. If you fail to provide a specimen of Bret, that's 14 points, well, you're going through already. That is 2 years you have lost your driver's permit for. And your livelihood in some cases, because driver's permit is critical for a job. I don't know if the government realizes that there are many jobs, particularly elementary occupations and so on, where driver's permit is critical for the job. You deliver FedEx, what you call mail packages, you deliver KFC, you deliver burger, you're working in the hospitality sector and so on. Taxi drivers, of course, are the main ones, you know. You have, Madam Speaker, carrying persons in a dangerous manner. I want to raise one matter related to all these fines and so on. And, you know, use of a noisy vehicle. We know that. But what is interesting is that playing a musical or noisy instrument in a vehicle without permission of the license authority, you don't lose any points for that, but you get a $1,000 fine. Now, that might be good because there are a lot of people who park up by bars and restaurants and so on, and they disturb people in the night. They disturb people in the night.
But how they know it's noisy?
They park up, they put on their DJ equipment, and it's not the restaurant or the bar sometimes, it's those persons in the car. They put on their system and blast music, and the entire neighborhood is in pain and inconvenience. Now, when you do that, what is instructive is that if you were serious about that, you would list the Environmental Management Agency as well as one of the public bodies allowed to issue fixed penalty notices. Because you have listed Public Transport Service Corporation, Airport Authority, CDA, National Hospital Management. I don't know what National Hospital Management reached there for, but I imagine, what is that, ambulance and so on. But the EMA, that supervises some of these problems could be listed as well as a body, a public body, to give fixed penalty offenses and so on, because of this terrible problem with noise and the disturbance to ordinary people. Madam Speaker, you have a series of offenses, and what I find curious, Madam Speaker, is that, of course, if you're using a phone for text and so on, you lose demerit point 6. There's a process where you can appeal all of these demerit points. That by itself is a cumbersome process, requiring education, requiring participation with the judiciary, and so on. If you, so, Madam Speaker, what would have been more practical is to break up this 100 into bands and create bands and have them in proportionate relation to each other. So you don't mix up somebody with one, with one light not working in the back there and put them with, someone else who, makes serious violations of blocking traffic and so on. You have using a vehicle without a horn. $300, 3 points, and so on, and those type of things. A better approach to take, which the government could have also looked at, is that sometimes somebody will leave home in the morning, your park light working, during the day something happened, you drop into what you call a pothole on the road, a light is broken, something happened to your muffler, where you could have met and treat with citizens, issue a notice to the citizen, and tell them you have 48 hours to fix this, and please report to the police station in your neighborhood so that they can put it on their computer and indicate that you have done that. Would that have not been a better approach than to this plethora menu of fines and demerit points and forcing you to pay, and if you don't pay you lose points and so on? There's a brutality with this type of legislation. For minor violations, you can give a citizen 48 hours and say fix it immediately by a computerized network system, report to your neighborhood police station, let them inspect it, it is fixing the light, the $3 bulb you bought, and then you go on your way. There's a human side to this which I'm not sure the government appreciates in this mad rush to just collect money. This is why, the member for Laventille West told us in America, where he was riding in a police car, we don't know for under what guise, but he was riding in a police car, and he told us, Madam Speaker, that they catch a serial killer by breaking a traffic violation. They catch a serial killer because he broke a traffic violation. No, you weren't there, but you said these things happen because you can catch serious criminals because of smaller violations and so on. In Trinidad and Tobago, they are implementing breathalyzer and speed guns and these type of things. That is fine. But the murderers are not driving fast or they're not drunk because you don't catch them that way. You don't catch. We had a case of a citizen, a constituent of mine, reporting an alleged kidnapping. And when the police found the vehicle on the highway in the vicinity of Freeport, they were driving slow, under the limit. There was absolutely nothing suspicious about the vehicle that had someone in the trunk of that car. Absolutely nothing suspicious. No violation at all. And that happened a couple years ago. They were able to apprehend persons in the middle of a kidnapping. In fact, they cordoned off the highway that day to get the car and so on. So, Madam Speaker, a more humane approach of separating minor violations from serious violations and putting a system in place with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to issue a 48-hour warning, fix it immediately, notify a police station, they put it into their system, they said John Smith has fixed that, take it off. Than taking hundreds of thousands of people and creating this lineup everywhere. Or if you're on your computer, pay the fine. This is not a proper approach to dealing with this problem. Madam Speaker, no. Madam Speaker, we have now the issue of the legality of this. The Attorney General is want to tell us that there is no need for a constitutional majority. It satisfies Surat and Northern construction. It is proportionate. There is a legitimate aim. It is proportionate and so on. But Madam Speaker, there is also another legal opinion and other legal views that tells us that the simplification of criminal proceedings cannot be a legitimate aim to cross the constitutional threshold. You cannot just say simplifying this process, removing people from the jurisdiction of the magistrate court is a legitimate aim to undo a constitutional threshold. And that is a matter that we have to also discuss in this debate. Yes. The other matter is that by this law, I don't know if some people will agree, by this law, the Parliament is pronouncing you guilty. Yes. The Parliament, and not a judicial body, is pronouncing you guilty. You then go and prove your innocence after we have pronounced you guilty in a circumstance. Whereas before, it is that you are caught, or the constable tells you, listen, I fine you for this, go and prove your go, and we will bring the evidence to tell you that you are guilty. Right? It is the burden is there. And they have changed the burden around, I think, from reasonable doubt to balance of probability. Now, reasonable doubt is a higher bar than balance of probability. Balance of probability could be 2-3 statements or a statement or something you can collect anywhere from somebody at the side of the road. So they have moved that. Is it also moved in other offenses that have remained in the Parent Act, particularly 70, 72 and related offenses that carry criminal sanctions? There are offenses that carry criminal sanctions, jail term and so on. So, Madam Speaker, there's something out of sync terribly with that. There's something out of sync as well where the person who is fined, the offender, in this case who is a violator, to use that term, need not appear at the court and the matter proceed without them. That's right. It proceed on the first occasion without them. There is no process here that I've read that says that if you do not show up at the trial, you do not show up on 2 occasions or 3 occasions, we proceed without you. This legislation, so if someone has a heart attack, if someone has a major problem, if someone is in flood, Madam Speaker, this week many people are home. They cannot go to school, they cannot go to work, but they cannot go to court either. So assuming that there will be no drainage work by the Minister of Works and Transport, things remain, we are very optimistic, we are very pessimistic that nothing will happen in the aftermath of these floods. In fact, it will continue to flood once they are in office. Madam Speaker, if someone is in a flood and they cannot go to the court and that matter is called, according to this law, they proceed without you. Ex parte. There is no process that says, listen, on the 3rd occasion, if you do not appear on the 2nd occasion or something like that. So that there is something draconian here as well. There is something draconian. And I want to end, my time is coming, and I want to end by stating that this framework speaks of a Gestapo operation. A Gestapo operation on the road, and a Gestapo operation to your home. That every little thing a citizen do. George Orwell's 1984 was the book, a seminal book. You know, Big Brother is watching you. The government is watching you, every single thing you do. Every motor car you drive, every problem that they are coming for you with a fine, with a system of taking away your livelihood. A driver's permit is a ticket to a livelihood. And they are operating with that system, creating a cumbersome system. I believe there's some merit here. There's some merit here about cleaning up the magistrate court and so on. There must be. But we need to work it out a little better so that you don't create another bureaucracy. As I said before, how much human beings are required to manage this? The registrar for the demerit system is going to be run by a division of one ministry. Do they have the resources for this? The technology exists. Do they have the people? Would they have the financial resources? Madam Speaker, these are some of the questions we pose. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And good afternoon to all once again as I rise to make a contribution on the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2017. I'll refer to it by its short title. First of all, Madam Speaker, I would like to thank this government, this Prime Minister, and this Attorney General for bringing to the Parliament a piece of legislation that is not only long overdue, but is groundbreaking in its content and has the intention not of locking up people and not of raising fines, but in my view, to give life and meaning to our watchwords: discipline, production, and tolerance. Because anyone could see the way we drive on the roads, and one could come to the quick conclusion there is absolutely no discipline. We are undisciplined society when it comes to how we drive on indiscipline, sorry. So we don't even adhere to the watchwords of discipline. And I think one of the objectives of this bill is not about collecting fines. Every speaker opposite, their anchor to this is either constitutional arguments or this is a revenue-raising money. I would like to see the day when we collect no fines for road traffic violations, because collecting no fines means you have no traffic violations. That is what this bill aims to do. Not to raise fines, but it aims to raise our consciousness as a society as to how to treat ourselves and how to treat fellow road users and how to behave as a civilized society. That is the purpose of the legislation, and to make our highways safer. Madam Speaker, we are here to amend Act number 4850 of 1934. And I think today there have been about 91 amendments, but this is going to be the most significant amendment to date. And as I develop my argument, Madam Speaker, please permit me to put on record, and I want to quote some figures from the World Blood Donor Day, WHO. It is estimated that 1.25 million people die each year due to road accidents around the world. 1.25 million people. It is the leading cause of death of young people between the ages of 15 to 29. And those are young people on the cusp of being the most productive members of society. I'm talking globally. 90% of it contributes to 90% of world fatalities in low to middle income countries. 90%, but those same countries only have 54% of the world's vehicles. So you see what the disproportionate burden is. Low to middle income countries only have 54% of the world's vehicles, but they account for 90% of road fatalities. And half of those dying are what we call vulnerable road users. That is, pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists. And it is estimated that all of this costs 3% of global GDP. So we have a problem. So I'm giving you the global context. What is the Trinidad and Tobago context? And this is the data from the TTPS, Trinidad and Tobago deaths by road user categories. Pedestrians account for 21% of the deaths due to road accidents. Those are the vulnerable groups. Cyclists, 3%. Riders of motorized 2- or 3-wheel vehicles, well, I don't think we have much three wheels again, 5%. But this is where the crunch is. 34% of the deaths are from passengers in 4-wheel vehicles and light vehicles. And another 34 drivers of 4-wheel cars and light vehicles. So cars and pickup trucks and light vehicles combined account for 71% of the road fatalities. And that's a frightening figure. And that is what this bill is about. This bill, as the opposition will have you believe, is not about revenue generation. It's about life. It's about inculcating a culture of safety on our roads, because our roads are a place of lawlessness. And until we admit we have that lawlessness problem, like a drug addict, unless you admit you have a problem, you would not find a solution. Madam Speaker, some of the issues we have to look at, and what this bill tries to address, are the issues of impaired driving, and I will speak about that a little later. And I want to congratulate the current Minister of Finance, who I think was the current Minister of Works and Transport at the time, who introduced the breathalyzer test, if I am not mistaken. Not only that, but that was one of his better works. And what... Not only one of my better works. And what we are seeing now is a further amendment to the road, to the Act, to once and for all harness our collective energies to become a more lawful society. One of the other issues we have to deal with, and I will go to town on this under Section 9, because this is a pet peeve. Member of Sapari, I hope you will join me in this. Distracted driving and irresponsible driving. And I will be talking at length on Section 9 about parents who love their children so much that they put down to sit down between themselves and the steering wheel. They love their children so much. And they love their dogs and pumpets so much that they put their 2-year-old child between themselves and a steering wheel, hold the child and the steering wheel with their left hand, and hold the pumpet with their right hand. It is all over in the residential. But this is an absolute tragedy. And another phone on the shoulder. Where is the personal responsibility in this? Sipario, have you ever seen that? Not the pumpet. But you have seen the child. Could you imagine? And we have 3 eminently qualified doctors here. Could you imagine a child whose bones are not yet hardened, even at 20 mph collision, and that child whom you love so much, whom the mother carried for 9 months, and you jar them, and you love them, and it's your popo, and you swaddle them, and you put that child to stand between yourself and a steering wheel? That is an absolute tragedy. That is a crime. So, as I say, part of my argument is anchored in the watchwords of this country, and I choose the word discipline. Madam Speaker, speakers across the floor, and especially member for Tabakit and Princestown, raise the issue of constitutionality, which I will address, that maybe depriving someone of their license is a breach of the Constitution under Section 4, I believe. And the member for Princestown also echoed those sentiments. And the member for Princestown also went to town, no pun intended, Princestown, about we should be tackling corruption first before we come to this act. Let me deal with the constitutional issue first. When you go to the Constitution and one reads the Constitution, rights enshrined, Section 4, the only rights I could see that members opposite are referring to, and they are echoing what happened in the other place, was Section 4A, the right of individual to life, liberty, security of the person, and enjoyment of property, and the right not to be deprived, therefore, except by due process of law. That property, I think you alluded to, can either be your license or your motor vehicle. Right, motor vehicle and license. So I will come to that. The other one is 4G, freedom of movement. Let me deal with whether your license and your car is property and whether those rights are infringed by this. First of all, what is a license? A license to operate a car is a contract between an individual and the state. It gives you permission to do something. Similarly, doctors have a license to practice medicine, a license which could be taken away from them if they breach something in the act. A dentist has a license to practice dentistry. He or she can lose that license for malpractice or other purposes. An accountant can lose their license to practice accountancy. An actuary can lose their license to practice in their profession. A pharmacist, like myself, a lawyer, could. So the laws are prolifically mandated to deprive someone of a license. How is depriving somebody of a license, a driver's permit, which is a contract between the state and the individual, be equated with taking away your constitutional rights? Then doctors and lawyers can raise the same constitutional issue. However, let us take something like a firearm. And this is where we need to look at the constitutions around the world. In the United States, the right to bear arms, the right to carry a firearm, is a fundamental right protected by the Second Amendment. So we have to look at what the Constitution allows and what the Constitution doesn't allow. So in our context, a license to operate a vehicle is a contract between the individual and the state. You take away that license because they have broken the law several times. It does not, therefore, interfere with Section 4G, freedom of movement. Even if you own the car and you lose your license, your freedom of movement to go from any part of the country to anywhere is not impeded. Simply get a driver, hire a taxi, go by bus. But let us not fool the public into thinking that your constitutional rights are being taken away. They are not. They are not.
Well said.
Right? A license is simply the result of demonstrating your skills and knowledge and based on other assessment tools. And it can already be revoked under existing law. So where is this constitutional argument coming from? And your license to drive is not to drive in your own property, you know, we are not taking away that right. Public roads are state-funded roads. Doesn't the state have a say in who should be using those state-funded roads? The state has jurisdiction over who should use these roads or not, and whether you are a capable person to use the roads or not. So I want to put to rest, hopefully, this issue of the Constitution. And even if you lose your license, we are not depriving you of your property because you could still use your motor vehicle if you are the owner. You simply get a driver. So your freedom of movement is not impeded. Your freedom to enjoy your property is not hampered with. But your license, which is a contract between you and the state, should be and may be suspended and taken away if you offend the law. So I am hoping that the public who is listening is not being swayed or convinced by the constitutional arguments. Let me deal with and handle the issue of corruption raised by Princestown. The Member of Parliament for Princestown, very eloquent, very convincing speaker, blew hard, made a lot of noise last week, whenever, about we should not be bringing this piece of legislation until we dealt with corruption. Yes, you did. I looked at your Hansard. You went to town on that. Deal with corruption at the licensing office. Deal with corruption before you bring this piece of legislation. For the uninitiated, hearing the member for Princestown, they might say, you know, that's a good argument. The government should really deal with corruption first. But there's something called an order paper. And if one simply picks up the order paper, you will see that the order papers in the past had legislation to deal with FACTA, that is a corruption-busting tool. We have the Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU. The Attorney General is bringing legislation to deal with asset forfeiture. And on this order paper, if you want to deal with corruption, let me now tell the public on page 3 of the order paper A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act, the Proceeds of Crime Act, the Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago, the Customs Act, and the Exchange Control Act. That, my friends, is dealing head-on, together with FACTA, with corruption. But it doesn't end there, Princestown. It goes on. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Land Adjudication Act. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Registration of Titles of Land Act. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Land Tribunal Act. A bill entitled An Act to Repeal and Replace the Crown Suits Limitation Ordinance. These 4 pieces of legislation to deal with land is going to be one of the biggest anti-corruption measures. Because ill-gotten gains are...
Too much into that, okay? Sure. Because you're bordering on anticipation. You can mention it.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Right. These acts deal with corruption. Yes, because the corrupt officers will take their money and do what with it? Convert it to land and property. So you could trace it. That is where the anti-corruption measures are. So let us be careful. Let us be careful and not mislead the public. So all these pieces of legislation are there for you to read, for you to ingest, for you to imbibe and educate yourself. Madam Speaker, I now want to turn to the act itself, the bill itself. A lot of commentary was had on the 9th schedule, and I promised, especially Honourable Member for Siparia, I'll be dealing with this now. 9th schedule, number 10, driving a vehicle with a child in the front seat who is 5 years and under. It is abhorrent that in 2017 we have to pass a law to tell a parent they shouldn't have a child under 5 in the front seat. It is absolutely abhorrent. That is a non-issue, it's a non-starter. Every parent should know that. Failing to place a child, number 11, failing to place a child who is 5 years and under in a child restraint or a booster seat. And you know, the flippancy with which the booster seat issue was dealt with by Oropouche East, saying that parents now have to go and buy a booster seat. What is wrong with that? Imagine that becomes an issue. This same child that you carried for 9 months, that is now an infant, the opposition is now making it an issue that you have to buy a booster seat or a safety seat for that child.
That is rather infantile. That is rather infantile.
Could you imagine? That is an argument to talk about. It has nothing. You hear the comment, everybody rich like me.
I appreciate that we've had a very stressful week and it might be difficult for members to restrain themselves. I remind you of the provisions of Standing Order 53. Please continue.
Yes. And Oropouche is not about being rich to afford a booster seat. It's about what value do you place on your child's life. And if you could afford to buy a car for how much thousands of dollars, you can't buy a booster seat. And that is an argument of the UNC. I find this ludicrous at best and shameful at worst. I cannot understand that argument. And Madam Speaker, this is where I had promised to come back. Sorry? Madam Speaker? Yes, I will, Madam Speaker. Much more pleasant to direct my comments to you. And this is where I want to come back to the personal responsibility of parents. Parents who deliberately put their children's lives in danger by not having them belted in, by having them on the front seat. Do you know what some parents do? Especially cars with bucket seats. They have their children standing up in the back, in the middle of both seats, with one hand on the right seat, one hand on the left seat. Unrestrained. Even at 30 miles an hour, if you have to make a sudden stop and that child lurches forward, what is he going to hit? The gear lever. Or the windshield and go straight through. We have to pass laws in 2017 to tell parents how to behave as a parent. In my view, you should take away that person's license for life. But you can't put that. But I'm just bringing these real-life examples to bear on the irresponsibility of people who use the roads. And that same parent, as I said before, they love their child so much that they put them between themselves and the steering wheel, and they will be crushed in even a 30 mph accident. Absolutely crushed. And die, if they are lucky. If they are unlucky, the child will live. But live as what? Where have we, as a society, when did responsibility go out of our collective consciousness?
May 2010.
When did that happen?
May 2014.
Section 14. Of 9th schedule, motor racing and speed trials between motor vehicles without permission. My heavens. We all know the highways and the parts of roads that are used by young persons to race. I think it happens outside Skinner Park in South. Yeah? In the early days, it used to happen, I believe, on the Uriah Butler Highway. But it still happens. It still happens. So we have to get serious and we have to modify the behavior of our young people. Actually, this legislation will save young people from themselves.
Good.
That is what this legislation will do. Because if we don't have the responsibility to change our behavior, just like how the introduction of the speed guns changed culture overnight, then this will change culture and make us more responsible for our actions. Madam Speaker, Section 24 of the 9th schedule, a pet peeve of mine. We are hearing about if we take away a person's license, taxi drivers depend on it, the package drivers, the UPS, the FedEx man. You know, it's simple. If having a license is so valuable to your day-to-day existence to earn a living, simply, obey the law. Don't give the authorities the opportunity to take away your license. Societies often say we need change, but then when you start with the change, no, leave it so. All of a sudden, people can't drive taxi. Who has the most responsibility on the road than a taxi driver? Who carries daily hundreds of people? Hundreds of people. Hundreds of people's lives are in the hands of a taxi driver every day. Therefore, he has a greater duty of care to behave in a certain way. So the argument that taking away a license because people are disobeying the law is somehow draconian doesn't hold water. Let me give you my own personal experience.
It exists now.
I was a casual drinker. I took a decision on October 24th, 2013, after just having won the by-election. That was the last day I drank. Last day. No, you're right. Because my metabolism was reaching a stage where after even 2 or 3 drinks, I will have a cracking headache for 2 days. And I took a decision I am not going to drink alcohol. And I'll tell you something. Outside of marrying my wife, is the second best decision I have ever made in my life. But, no, Jordan Piana was third. Having children was third, Jordan Piana was fourth. Madam Speaker. Careful. 48-1.
St. Joseph.
Madam Speaker, 48-1. No, not myself. But the point is, a lot of these fines could be avoided if people simply behave themselves on the roads. So it is not a revenue-raising measure. It is not a draconian measure. It is not a punitive measure. The member for Parliament for Oropouche West spoke about Section 26, failure to submit breath analysis or willful alteration. I had a lot of trouble pronouncing the word alternation. I having some trouble with it too. Of concentration of alcohol in his breath or blood. Madam Speaker, that clause was put in there because there are a lot of studies which tell you how people try to beat the breathalyzer by either hypo or hyperventilation. I even found a very nice article that talks about people who drink alcohol and who had gastric bypass surgery and who have been subsequently held for breathalyzer tests. And it is advised for members opposite that once you have gastric bypass surgery, you should watch how you take in your alcohol. Because it could give you a very bad reading. And I quote from MedPage today from San Diego, June 15th. In a case control study, blood alcohol concentration peaked about 0.03% higher and took 40 minutes longer to be dissipated among patients who had undergone bariatric surgery than those who had not. Alcohol after gastric bypass surgery should be approached with caution. So everyone who has had bypass surgery should watch themselves with their intake of alcohol. Madam Speaker, I have congratulated the Honorable Attorney General on being very proactive on bringing this piece of legislation here. In coming to a close, because I don't intend to detain the House for too long, in looking at models from countries like Spain, what are some of the features of deterrence? Because what we are about here on this side is not deterrence. We are not about punitive measures. We are not about raising revenue. It's about deterrence. Item number one, key success factor number one, legislation, done. 2, enforcement. Other authorities have to see about that. 3, surveillance. And this is where Section 34, the red light cameras, fulfills the requirement of surveillance. The days for having a policeman on every corner are done. You simply can't do it. So you must have these, what we in the old days used to call those humps on the road, sleeping policemen. So the red light cameras fulfills the requirements of having surveillance. A key success factor when you want to change culture and change behavior in the shortest possible time is fear of consequences.
The original 30 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Fear of consequences. In Trinidad and Tobago, let's admit it, there are no consequences for illegal behavior. Let's admit that. At all levels of society, there are no consequences. You do something, you get away with it. We have to change that culture. And now we must have consequences. So Section 35 deals with that, the fixed penalty system. Let that be a consequence of your illegal, dangerous behavior that not only threatens yourself, my God, if you don't like your own life, at least like the life of somebody else on the road, a complete stranger. But if drivers don't even like themselves, how do you expect them to like the driver next to you? How? And this bill is a bill that is charged with the opportunity of changing culture. That is what this bill is about. It's not about revenue generation. It's not about taking away constitutional rights. It's about changing culture and starting to infuse our society with the feeling that you do something wrong now on the roads, you are going to get caught, and these are the consequences. Therefore, I have two choices: lose my license or change my behavior. So this bill is more about behavior change modification. And the fifth component coming out of that study in Spain is the application of laws. And sections 1 to 34 does that admirably, where we are now applying a law to convert crimes to violations and offenses to violations, so that you don't clog up an already congested magistrate court system that is overburdened and overworked. So, Madam Speaker, as I come to a close, I hope I have articulated my personal feelings on some of the behaviors of fellow road users. I know I went to town a lot on my personal views on the total disrespect people have for their own children. And if you don't have respect for your own children's life, then you can't respect the other road users. I'm really passionate about this. And I'm hoping that this legislation not only is an opportunity to change behavior, but becomes a crime-fighting tool. Because what is coming down the road is radio ID, AG, yes, sir, on your license plates. Yep. So as the law evolves, it becomes a major crime-fighting tool. So, Madam Speaker, I hope I have answered the two major issues raised by the member for Tabakit and the member for Princestown, the constitutional issues. And I want to support this bill, and I thank the Attorney General, and I thank all members for listening to me.
Member for Chaguanas, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this debate entitled the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2017. And it has a longer title to that. Madam Speaker, this might not be a money bill in the strict sense of the word, but there is plenty money to be received from the passage of this bill, extracting from persons who are already facing significant hardships in this country, losing their jobs. But I want to also say that while I appreciate the fact that one might need to be strict with the codes of conduct for road users, the imposition of these huge fines may not necessarily give us the desired behavior. This can be substantiated, Madam Speaker, by a study conducted by David A. Anderson, professor of the Department of Economics at the Center College in Kentucky. And his article, I will just indicate that for reading, shows extensively where stiffer penalties does not necessarily mean that you are going to be placed or pushed into deterring your criminal behavior, and in this case, offenses. Madam Speaker, my colleague from St. Joseph spoke extensively about road traffic accidents and the effect of road traffic accidents. He indicated that, well, he did give some data on the international scenario and a small amount on our local situation. I think it might be very instructive for all of us to be advised as to the impact of accidents and fatalities on our roads. I've just gotten some data from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and I want to share that with ourselves here and the national community, because I asked for that data to be deconstructed by major highways in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, what I'm going to indicate here this evening really covers a period of 5.5 years for the period 2012 to 2017, as current as we are. It might startle us to know that for that period of time, we had a total of 839 road deaths. Madam Speaker, if we disaggregate that by the age of the victims, and the police identifies minor as under 18 and adults as over 18, we would see that of that 839, 116 persons who lost their lives were classified as minors, and 723 were classified as adults. It is also instructive to note that when I asked for the data on a gender basis, of that 839, for the same period, 2012 to 2017, as current as we are, 679 males lost their lives and 160 females. But what I also found very interesting is I asked for the major highways and where most of these fatalities would have occurred. Madam Speaker, topping the list of road deaths is the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway, where we had 86 accidents and 110 fatalities. The Uriah Butler Highway came in second, with 71 accidents and 81 lives that were lost. The Sir Solomon Hochoy Highway was third, with 74 accidents and 87 lives were lost. And the priority bus route, which I also asked for, because we see a lot of accidents taking place on the PBR, were 48 accidents and 55 fatalities. Madam Speaker, I didn't want to exclude Tobago, so I asked for the data on the Claude Noel Highway, and again, in case people missed the source, it's the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. There were 16 accidents and 23 fatalities in Tobago. Madam Speaker, some of us would recognize that along the highways, and in some cases there's a preponderance in certain places of these casualties, whether it be Forest Park at Claxton Bay, and people indicate that there's a wind share there that they experience. Some time ago, people used to say that there was a girl who died and the parent made a monument of her, and that her soul was roaming there.
The statue is there without a head.
You also have now that the statue is without a head. So people say all kinds of things. But whatever they say, you also find that there's a preponderance at the Gasparillo flyover. It will also be instructive to note that there is also a number of fatalities that take place in Chaguanas, in the vicinity of the Diwali Nagar, and also on the stretch of Valencia, where people have the tendency to speed. My colleague from St. Joseph made reference to the fact that a license, a driver's license, is a contract between an individual and the state. State resources, the roads. And he went on to compare that with a license, which is, and he says, like a doctor or a dentist, or a doctor, as we now would have heard from him just now, or an accountant, and that they can lose their license. Madam Speaker, that is comparing apples and oranges. That's a different thing. I want to suggest to my friend that when you become a doctor or a dentist or an accountant, you go through a significant period of training before you become licensed to operate. And therefore, one of the things I wanted to look at in the bill on page 43, item number 12, which says, on the 9th schedule, offenses of driving instructor. Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, Section 46. Those offenses carry a fine of $2,000 and 12 demerit points. Madam Speaker, I'm raising this matter because I feel that it is something that is very critical in terms of us being given, or awarded as you would want to call that, with a license to drive. The question I want to ask this evening is, what is the quality of that graduate driver who we are placing on this road? What is that quality we are getting through a period prior to that of induction or education or training? And that brings into question as well the quality of the driving school, the concept of the driving school, the concept and the quality of the driving instructor and the learner driver. I do not want to repeat what would have been said before. I want to take a new paradigm in terms of the contribution to this bill.
That is how you bring the culture change.
And the culture change is not going to be one that you must be punished into behavioral modification change. That is not how it happens. If that was happening, if that is how it happened, then corporal punishment will still be in schools today. Because all of us who went to school, and my friend the Attorney General will know. You have to, and then you're hearing to abolish the laws. Well, maybe some people on that side will prefer that. We on this side say you must be duly appointed, legally instituted laws in this country. And we are also patriots of this country, quite contrary to what others may say. But I want to say, Madam Speaker, and we are not certainly any missiles or any birds that fly. I don't, my friend is known well as a seagull in other places. But I want to say as well that in terms of the driving school, I want to indicate what really is the criteria we would see. And I want to also say that what we are told in chapter 4850, Madam Speaker, and I read, a person who instructs a learner to drive a motor vehicle in class 2, 3, 4, or 7 shall be the holder of a valid driving permit for that class of vehicle for a period of not less than 3 years. Madam Speaker, can you imagine that to operate a driving school and to operate as a driving instructor, all you have to have is 3 years experience. And when I asked the Ministry of Works and Transport and the licensing authority, can you give me the forms, the application forms, where I can apply to be a driving school, a driving instructor? I'm told that there is none. You simply take the name of the school that you want to operate under. You go through the Revenue Office and the Ministry of Legal Affairs. You ensure that nobody else has that name, and you just put on your license, your name. You could paint it on your vehicle. Fish and Sons Driving School from Gulf View or wherever it is. I'm not saying that they live there. Gulf View, maybe Gulf of Paria. And therefore, I found it very strange. When I asked for the qualifications of the instructor, then you must be able to teach somebody who is in a lower class than you. That is, if you are driving for the last 3 years, you can teach somebody who is now going to to learn to drive. Madam Speaker, I say this because when you look at what is happening in other parts of the world, when you look at, we are saying that we want to have a first world country. We want to ensure that we do not have so many road fatalities, so many people dying on the road. Is it that we have a lot of accidents and road fatalities because we do not have proper driver instruction programs? Is it that simply a defensive driving course will work? And I'll show you just now some of the recommendations and some of the things that have been done in this country that people are not aware of. What about the whole aspect of criminal record checks? What about police character certificate? You might have to get that before you become a driving school or driving school instructor. What is this thing that we are talking about in terms of offenses of the driving instructor? We are seeing in this very bill that we are talking here in terms of the attire of the taxi driver. My friend from La Hoqueta Talparo was saying some people drive with a merino and a short pants. I hope some of us know what merino is. But isn't there need as well for a dress code for driving instructors? Isn't there a code of ethics as well we should develop for the driving schools? You simply cannot expect to have the quality of the outcome. Madam Speaker, you know, all of us here would have gone to school at some time or the other. We're exposed to education and to training. And I have my own mantra about that. Education makes one trainable. Training makes one employable. And the right attitudes keep you in continuous employment. And you know, there are many things that we could say about learning. And this is an aspect of our lives in this country that we should protect. That we must learn how to learn. We must learn how to love. We must learn how to live. We must learn how to lead. We must learn how to leave a legacy. Madam Speaker, this aspect is so very important because if we do not have the right qualities for a driving instructor, what will be the learning outcomes and the quality of that graduate? If it is that a poor instructor who doesn't have the education skills or the application or the delivery, who does not even know how to communicate well, who doesn't know how to plan a lesson or a program, who do not know the taxonomy of education, who do not know about the cognitive domain or the psychomotor skills, or more importantly and possibly most importantly, the affective domain. These are the things the Attorney General has to take into consideration, not simply continuing and punishing people and say, offense, $2,000, 12 points for offense of driving instructor. What are these offenses and what are we going to do to correct the situation? Or else what is going to happen? The data I read out earlier this evening, we're going to have increasing numbers. Road fatalities will simply be a statistic. You know, I always say, Madam Speaker, that is only when it happens close to you, you understand how it feels. A lot of people want to have vehicles and to own vehicles. They do not even understand how the vehicle works, operates. They don't even know about the speed, how to control it. A driving school will tell us so many things. And therefore, Madam Speaker, it is my view that this, for me, is an area of very grave concern. I call it the unregulated market of driving schools and driving instructors that impact upon the lives of our learner drivers and ultimately our licensed drivers. Madam Speaker, if you ask anybody who went to a driving school, and it's a school, apart from the permit, What are the courses you would have done at these driving schools? I have sufficient examples here from other countries that I can refer to, and maybe I'll refer to one later on. And one is Canada, but I'll talk about that a little bit. But there are no certification involved for these driving schools. We have in Trinidad and Tobago an accreditation council of Trinidad and Tobago. And that accreditation council, by virtue of an extension and delegated authority, conveys onto the National Training Agency, which really supervises and coordinates the vocational sector, occupational standards of competence that could be developed. And I'll explain that a little more because I think the Attorney General came in at the right time for me to be speaking about this. How do we develop standards of competence to ensure that the quality of the driver graduate is such that they'll be more articulate, and I say articulate, in terms of safer road users. Madam Speaker, so there's no certification. If you were to look at what has happened in Trinidad and Tobago and other parts of the world, you will see that for us here, and through the National Training Agency, a number of standards have been developed. And you know, one of the persons who was supervising the National Training Agency before was a member for Digomati Northeast. So maybe he's very familiar because he's not really paying any attention to what I'm talking about the NTA here.
Never does.
But I want to say, I want to congratulate the work of the National Training Agency, and I'll tell you how. Madam Speaker, I don't think very many people in this country appreciate the fact that we have developed driving instructor standards. I don't think the time is right for us at all, especially at the time when the Honorable Minister of Finance is saying that there's a shortage of foreign exchange. That we should not be imported any persons from abroad to pay more foreign exchange when we have competent people, professionals, to be able to train to a professional driving instructor in this country. That is where we should be aiming at. A professional driving instructor. And I'm being asked what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about improving the quality of the graduate to become a proper driver on our roads, so that that person will not only be a better person in terms of saving their own lives, as a member for St. Joseph indicated, but taking other persons in the vehicles. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I just want to indicate for those who are unaware that there is in fact a lead body. What is a lead body? A lead body, L-E-A-D, a lead body. It is sometimes referred to as an occupational area or sector advisory skills council, like in the United Kingdom. And what is that? It is really where you have professionals who have come together to develop standards of competence in various occupational areas. And I can give you the example of which we are speaking about now with regards to this bill. The lead body for the development of occupational standards. And in this case, there's a Trinidad and Tobago National Vocational Standard Level 2 developed for advanced driving operations, heavy and extra heavy vehicles. And that lead body comprises, and I'm sure many people in here will know this name, Nathaniel Douglas of Douglas Transport Consultancy. He was a former Transport Commissioner. Robert Knights of the Ministry of Works and Transport, Traffic Management Branch. Peter Gopal-Singh, Condisec 93, Limited Defensive Driving School, he's the chairperson. Annette Awoku, TIDD Group of Companies, and TIDD means the Institute of Defensive Driving, and Mr. Byron Thomas of the TIDD Group of Companies. Madam Speaker, all of them have come together to develop the following standards that govern the operation and that will be impacting upon driving schools and driving instructors. The competency standards for Caribbean vocational qualifications. And I know that the member for Aruka, Maloney, she always likes and she always admires when I speak about the CVQ. And the CVQ is really a regional occupational standard. The point I'm making to you is once our drivers are certified according to these standards, it is very easy for them to apply into any of the countries in the Caribbean. That is what makes it a regional occupational standards. Where it is only localized to Trinidad and Tobago, it is called a Trinidad and Tobago National Vocational Qualification. And I should give you the list. And I'm sure that the member for Aruka Maloney will be impressed when I would read out the amount of standards and the categories that have been developed so that driving schools in the future and driving instructors can be trained along these approved standards. So it is not simply a fly-by-night. It is not simply I wake up in the morning, I want to open my driving school. And therefore, the following standards I want to indicate that are available now for use. Advanced driving operations, light motor vehicle level 2 for class 3 vehicles. Defensive driving instruction, extra heavy vehicle level 3 for class 5. Defensive driving instruction, light motor vehicle level 3, class 3. Defensive driving instruction, omnibus level 3, class 6. Learner driver instruction, light motor vehicle, where most people apply to be certified, level 3, class 3. Learner driving instruction, motorcycle, level 3, class 1. Public transport vehicle, driving operations, buses, level 2. And these are like school buses, class 4. And the TTNVQ, or the local qualification which has been approved and completed, advanced driving operations, extra heavy vehicles, level 2, class 5. I'm also advised that a driving and occupational standard for defensive driving is also being developed for the police and for licensing examiners. Madam Speaker, I want to move on to another area. But before I go on to details about some of the aspects of the bill, I want to say that it is easy for us to sit here or to stand here and to make contributions and to talk about the various 100 of these areas in the bill, in the 9th schedule, which are identified for fines, demerit points, or both of them. The question often is, while this is a burden on the person who is driving, and this is their side of the bargain, I want to add to the discussion of my previous colleague who spoke. What about the government side of the bargain? What about the government's responsibility to make sure that the road markings and the road signs are properly identified for us to facilitate driving? Madam Speaker, I don't know if it happened to you, but certainly within the last few days, we have had, and maybe today as well, very heavy rainfall, day and night. And if you were to try to drive in the night and to look for a road mark, it is very difficult. And it could be very dangerous. You could hardly make it out. And sometimes people might be construed as driving under the influence because they are swerving, trying to find their space in their lane. And therefore, they may also be seen as swerving on the road if they are trying to avoid potholes.
Like an avocado.
Madam Speaker, right where it had a lot of flood, on I think it's the connector road, connecting the highway back to the Caroni Old the bridge by the Commission site. On the corner there, if you pass there now, that road is in need of repair for the longest while and has not been the corner. And people try to avoid going into the rough part and can find themselves in the grave difficulty. Madam Speaker, what about the railings? In other words, the barriers. Some barriers are concrete barriers, some are plastic, some are metal, some are cables, and yet I have none at all in some places. In plenty places. Could you imagine the responsibility of the driver now? You are going to be looking at a driver and how he drives and the potential for accidents when the state has a duty and a responsibility of care for all the citizens of this country. Therefore, Madam Speaker, it is very important for us to ensure that we have the appropriate signage on roads. Madam Speaker, in Canada, my friend made reference to what obtains abroad. In Canada, you'll find that there's a blended approach, a blended learning approach to driver education. We are seeing in this bill that you can pay online for your penalties. Well, if you're paying online for your penalties, why don't make online learning available to all the people who want to become road users or driver or license? You could do that. Look at here. In Canada, we go and research it and you'll see. Not only that, we have launched here through the University of Trinidad and Tobago Knowledge TT. It's an online platform, and I recommend strongly to the Attorney General that he consider educating road users, increasing the awareness campaign of traffic users in various aspects of motor vehicle operations. Use the platform. It is available.
CNMG failed with the weather thing and
And therefore, another opportunity for me seems to be like what obtains in Canada. Why is it not possible for us, even in our secondary schools, where we have students who are now moving beyond the age of 17 and 18, why can't we introduce some elective for persons who want to become early drivers? Why not? You know, you have to think beyond what exists now if you really want to make the roads and road users and our lives safe. You have to do things differently. You cannot expect that we'll do the same way and we'll have a different approach. Madam Speaker, I want to get to another aspect of the bill that speaks about rehabilitation. On section 88N3, it says a person who is disqualified from holding or obtaining a driving permit may be reissued with a driving permit by the licensing authority where he, A, participates in a driver's
Honourable Member for Chaguanas, your original 30 minutes have now expired. You're entitled to 15 more minutes if you intend to. And before you rise, honourable members, can I have your concurrence that we will take the suspension at the completion of the contribution of the member for Chaguanas? Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, it says that it might be reissued with you might be reissued with a driving permit if A, you participate in a driver's rehabilitation program approved by the licensing authority, that you will pass a driving test, and that you will pay the prescribed fee for the reissue of the driving permit. But, Madam Speaker, the question one will want to ask is, what is this rehabilitation program? As a matter of fact, I want to tell you personally that I found that, and this is just a suggestion to the Honorable Attorney General to take into consideration, whether we could have used another word, another phrase for rehab. And the reason is simply that when you speak about rehab, people, and I have the definitions, but people seem to, it connotes some idea that somebody has an addiction of some sort, a negative connotation. And therefore it brands you. It affects your character. It affects your psyche. It affects your self-esteem. And I'm wondering whether we could not have learned from other jurisdictions, for example, and maybe call the program a remedial program. In some cases, like in Canada, it's called back on track. And you will have a certain number of hours that you go to your classroom, or you have whatever kind of, again, rehabilitation is not the concept I'm looking at, but remediation. How do you move from where you were, and how do you become better at what you should be? And I want to ask the Honorable Attorney General to give that some consideration, because in our country, when you hear things like this rehab, the first thing you think is about Cora. Somebody going up there. Or Ward 1. I think we should probably not only because other countries might use the word rehabilitation, but if we can use something else that will connote something, as I indicated, that will be remedial, it might be very useful. Madam Speaker, I want to deal with some other matters in terms of the potential for corruption, some of which would have been raised by my colleagues. Clause 6 would amend Section 10A of the Act by increasing the penalty for failing to comply with the directions of or obstructing a traffic warden. And my colleague, the member for Oropouche East, raised this matter. But I simply want to ask some questions in addition to what my colleague raised. Why is there the need for a drastic increase in the $700? This could lead to overzealous traffic wardens being tempted to threaten drivers with this fine in order to bring them in line and with their thinking. Has anybody, I want to ask the question, Madam Speaker, has anybody ever been charged with the current fine and not pay it? So what is the reason? Is it that you are paying $9,700 more to gain better respect? What is the problem with the existing fine? Madam Speaker, I want to raise another matter with respect to Clause 11 that would amend Section 23 of the Act to make the obscuring of the inside of a vehicle through the windshield or windows a traffic violation. And the question is this going to be done as it is being done now, that you're trying to see? Madam Speaker, the reality is when it is cloudy and when it is raining, you can't really see inside a vehicle, even though you have the legitimate tint. And the question I want to ask is, how is this going to be measured or tested? The widely used law enforcement method is by a light transmission meter. That is what applies in developed countries, which gives a percentage ratio of the window or windscreen with the tint to that without the tint. The popular measuring device is called a Tint Meter Model 100 by Laser Labs Incorporated. I'm just giving the brand. I'm not saying that that is the one you will want to secure. Arbitrary visual checks by the authorities have to be prevented in order to reduce the potential for corruption and bribery. Madam Speaker, the Act is amended further in terms of traffic signal violation after Section 66. The following new Act, Section 66A, where a person driving or propelling a vehicle who fails to comply with the indication given by a traffic signal light is liable to a fine of $5,000 for the first traffic violation and a fine of $7,000 for any subsequent traffic violation. This section does not apply to an emergency vehicle. Madam Speaker, when I used to have to come to Port of Spain to my office every morning at a certain time, or most mornings, or almost every morning, you will find an ambulance with a siren coming from south to north, and everybody has to move on this side. What about if that siren is illegitimately being used because you have workers there who you're taking to the Hercules Medical Sciences Complex? Who is going to take that person to task? Is that person going to be liable to any fine for disrupting the flow of traffic? Why should they be exempted? Because it has a sign mark ambulance? No, I don't think so. I think that is something that we should reconsider. An owner may file a notice to contest on the grounds at the time of the traffic violation was committed that the motor vehicle was stolen, or that he is no longer the owner, having duly registered a change of possession of the motor vehicle in accordance with Section 19(1). Madam Speaker, I want to ask some questions. Question one, what if the registration number of the vehicle photographed is illegitimate? Who are you going to send that penalty, that fine to? Are we going to have this system so up to date? Perhaps criminals could make a series of illegal license plates. I know that the Honorable Attorney General made reference to it in his opening presentation, that he will... No, I'm saying that I'm asking questions with respect to the bill. Yeah. And use them at roadways at night. How many persons, and as I was talking about driving instructors and so on, of these accidents and fatalities I mentioned this evening, how many persons have been trained ever in this country to drive at nights? How many? None. And I'll tell you what, sometimes that's a lot of the times when the accidents do take place and fatalities. So when I talk about the whole concept of the driving school and the driving instructor, it has to be carefully and closely looked at and re-examined. Madam Speaker, emergency vehicles are permitted to override the operation of traffic signals. Suppose while using the green light, a driver is overridden from the other approach by an emergency vehicle, and the subsequent data shows that the driver using the intersection when overridden went through a traffic light. Could that be a grounds of notice to contest? These are the realities of the road. Will there also be certification and proof that the traffic signals were operated efficiently at the time of the photographed incident? Who is going to certify these cameras? You go into some elevators, you see a sign, you see a certificate when last inspected. How do we know that these things are going to be continuously monitored and certified and efficiently and effectively operating? Are you going to be penalizing people for your incompetence and sending them now to contest a situation because you are not doing your work effectively? Madam Speaker, I want to go to our next area called vehicle inspection, which is focusing on quality testing. The Ministry of Transport, United Kingdom, has a test for roadworthiness, commonly referred to as the MOT test. It includes testing of batteries and tires. I mean, this reminds me of a situation that happened to my parents many years ago. They were driving along the Beetham Highway, and my father was pulled off the road and given a ticket for what? For tires. And you know, when he asked the question, he said, so why you give me a tires? The policeman told him, we have this vehicle number and we were looking for it a long time now. What? There are things like that happens in this country. If you had any infraction with any police officer or anybody in the law enforcement agencies, they can find opportunities to charge you willfully, and you have to go and contest. Your horn not working, your wiper not working, your lights not working.
Park light.
And I agree with my colleague. Could it not be that we could give a notification to you to get it repaired, and in 48 hours you present it to a police station and you have it corrected? Madam Speaker, the whole concept of vehicle overloading. I know that the Honorable Attorney General made reference to the fact that he was looking at the Jamaican situation, and that he was, and the acronym that was used, or the slogan is that we're going to be building the plane while we fly in the plane. Well, the only plane I really remember is one that we landed at Camden. When I gave the slogan, from cutting cane to flying plane. We flying plane in the air. But when you see some vehicles pass you, we just remark in our own vehicles like they're flying low. And you know what, Madam Speaker? It is not only about the fines and the penalties and the punishment, and the enforcement is the key. Who will enforce these laws? Who will ensure that these things are enforced? Are we going to go to clog up the system further? And I know that the Honorable Attorney General said that he had some suggestions and some ideas as to how we're going to efficiency the system. Well, all those things are very good. But if we do not have the manpower and the resources, as everything that we are talking about in this country now is starving for resources and people. And therefore, I want to suggest strongly to him that even a concept of vehicle overload is very important. Section 97.2 deals with the whole aspect of vehicle overload. And one of the things that we'll want to look at in the concept of this vehicle overload is improve regulations and the kind of permits for overload. You see sometimes people in the back of a vehicle and they have to get permission from the licensing authority. All of these are very critical when we are reviewing this whole aspect of the law. And Madam Speaker, as I conclude, I want to just say that the problem isn't the laws, it's the enforcement of the laws. And we must make the human and the financial resources available to ensure that we have trained, certified, competent people on our roadways to save our lives. I thank you.
Honourable members, we shall take the suspension now. We shall return here at 5 p.m.